The desert sun was merciless, rising over the Nevada horizon like a torch that set the sky ablaze. The airstrip shimmered with heat, mirages dancing across the endless expanse of tarmac. Rows of F-22 Raptors stood waiting, gleaming like silver predators ready to take flight. Among the towering machines and the men who flew them, she walked quietly, her boots crunching against gravel. She was the youngest pilot on base, barely 22, and to most of the veterans, she was little more than a kid who had somehow slipped through the gates of a warrior's world. Her name rarely carried weight. In the mess hall, conversations would swirl around her battle stories, tales of near misses, victories over the clouds. She listened, never interrupting, never daring to claim her own space in the circle. She didn't have war stories yet. She didn't have medals or scars. What she had were hours, endless hours in the simulator where she flew faster, sharper, cleaner than anyone else in her class. The data didn't lie. Her reflexes were lightning, her decision-making flawless under pressure. She was, by every measurable standard, an ace in the making. But numbers and performance charts didn't earn respect on base. Reputation did. To the older pilots, she was still the kid. They admired her talent in the way one might admire a bright cadet at the academy, impressive, yes, but untested. The sky, they believed, was no place for untested talent. It was ruthless, unpredictable, unforgiving. And until she had survived it, no simulator run could make her their equal. She knew this. She carried the weight of it in silence. It didn't matter how sharp her flying was on paper. What mattered was the unspoken law of the base. You weren't truly a pilot until the squadron trusted you with their lives, and trust had to be earned, not demanded. Still, she waited. Every dawn, while others dragged themselves out of bed, she was already lacing her boots, already running laps around the perimeter of the runway. Sweat soaked her uniform, the desert air clawing at her lungs, but she pushed harder. In the simulator rooms, she stayed after hours, repeating complex maneuvers until muscle memory burned them into her bones. Barrel rolls, evasive dives, combat turns. She mastered them all until the machine felt like an extension of her own body. There were moments when she doubted herself, moments when she stared at the jets lined up like kings of the sky and wondered if she'd ever be trusted with one. Yet those doubts never lasted long. Every time she slid into a cockpit, even a simulated one, she felt the same electricity running through her veins. Flying wasn't something she wanted. Flying was something she was built for. She remembered her first solo simulator run. The instructors had set the difficulty to maximum, throwing every possible failure at her. Engine fires, missile locks, hydraulic loss, radar jamming. One by one, she solved them, not with panic but with precision. When the digital sky finally cleared, her jet was still in the air, every system under control. The room had gone silent. Even the hard-nosed instructor who had doubted her the most muttered, "Well, damn." That memory fueled her on the days when the squadron brushed past her, their laughter a reminder of the distance between them. She wasn't one of them, not yet, but she knew the sky was waiting. What they didn't see, what they didn't yet understand, was that her gift wasn't only in her hands or her reflexes. It was in her vision. Where others saw gauges, data streams, and warnings, she saw patterns. Where others reacted, she anticipated. It was as though the aircraft whispered to her, and she alone understood its language. But the world doesn't bend for potential, it bends for proof. She walked the flight line each evening, watching the Raptors return, their engines rumbling like beasts settling after the hunt. Pilots climbed down, helmets tucked under their arms, laughter carried on the wind. She stood apart, invisible, yet a fire burned quietly within her chest. They didn't see her yet, but they would. The sky had a way of testing every pilot eventually, and when her moment came, she was ready to prove, to them, to the captain, and to herself, that she wasn't just a kid at the edge of the runway. She was the ace they didn't know they had. The rhythm of life on the base was relentless, designed to wear down the body until only discipline remained. Reveille sounded at dawn, a harsh trumpet call that yanked every pilot from their beds. For most, Mornings began with groans, curses, and sluggish movements. For her, the sound was a challenge. Before her bunkmates had even stretched, she was already on her feet, tightening her laces with military precision, pushing herself out into the desert air that bit like fire against her lungs. The morning run was never optional. Miles of cracked asphalt and sandy trails circled the perimeter fence, weaving past radar towers and fuel tanks. The veterans jogged in packs, swapping stories between gasps of breath. She ran alone, her ponytail whipping behind her, feet pounding out a rhythm that matched her heart. Each step was a reminder that she was not here to blend in, she was here to endure, to sharpen, to outlast. Inside the classrooms, the air conditioning hummed against the desert heat. Rows of pilots sat hunched over binders and manuals thick as bricks. Diagrams of flight patterns, combat maneuvers, and emergency checklists filled every page. The instructors spoke in clipped tones, their words sharp as bullets. Know your systems. Trust your instruments. Never trust luck. She absorbed it all with a quiet intensity. While others doodled in margins or drifted in and out of focus, her pen scratched notes in small, precise handwriting. She memorized procedures until they etched themselves into her brain, rehearsing them silently while others dozed. To her, every lesson was fuel. She wasn't here to pass the time. She was here to be ready. The simulator rooms were her true arena. Darkened chambers lit only by glowing consoles. The machines hummed with artificial life as scenarios spun across the screens. The instructors never went easy on her. Enemy fighters appeared from nowhere, alarms blared, engines sputtered, and missiles locked on with merciless precision. Where other pilots faltered, she thrived. Her fingers danced across switches, her voice calm as she called out maneuvers to herself, her mind always one step ahead of the chaos. Sweat dripped down her brow, but her breathing stayed even. She didn't just fly, she became part of the aircraft. Every dive, every roll, every evasive brake felt instinctive. When the simulation ended, her jet was still in the sky. Her peers respected her skills in the simulator, but that respect rarely followed her into the mess hall. Meals were noisy affairs, laughter echoing off metal walls as pilots compared notes and relived missions. She sat at the edge of the long tables, her tray balanced carefully, eating quietly while conversations surged around her. Nobody was cruel, but few included her. She was the rookie, the one without real combat time, the one still proving she belonged. Sometimes she listened to the veterans' banter, stories of dodging surface-to-air missiles, of streaking through storm clouds while radar painted them like targets, of the adrenaline that came with flying when the stakes were real. Their words stoked a fire inside her. She wanted those stories. She wanted the kind of respect that couldn't be earned in a simulator but had to be carved into memory at 30,000 feet. But until that day came, she trained. Evenings found her on the tarmac, the raptors glinting in the setting sun like silent gods. She walked among them, tracing her eyes over their sleek frames, memorizing every curve and panel. Sometimes she climbed into a parked cockpit, closing her eyes and gripping the stick, imagining what it would feel like to truly command the sky. She wasn't blind to her isolation. It stung, of course it did, to be overlooked in the very place where she worked hardest. But she wore that isolation like armor. Every dismissal, every laugh that passed her by, every rookie muttered under someone's breath. It only fueled her. What none of them understood was that she wasn't racing them. She wasn't here to prove she was as good as the rest. She was here to prove she was better. And though no one could see it yet, the day would come when that truth could no longer be ignored. The desert had a way of stripping away pretenses, and the sky had a way of revealing what a pilot was truly made of. For now, her life on base was repetition. Runs, lectures, drills, simulations, silence. But beneath that repetition pulsed something unstoppable, the quiet certainty that the sky was saving her place, waiting for the moment it would finally demand her name. The captain was a legend on base long before she arrived. His name carried the kind of weight that silenced conversations in the mess hall whenever he entered. He wasn't the loudest voice or the boldest presence, but he didn't need to be. Respect followed him like contrails in the sky. His uniform bore the marks of countless missions, his ribbons a history of battles fought and survived. To her, he was untouchable. At first, their worlds barely brushed. She was just another trainee under his command, one of many names in his logbook. But she noticed the way other pilots leaned forward when he spoke, how even the cockiest ace quieted when he offered critique. His voice carried the authority of experience, steady, patient, firm, without cruelty. He didn't need to raise it. Her first real interaction with him came after a grueling simulator run. She had been pushed to the limit, multiple bogeys, radar jamming, engine failure, and still managed to limp the virtual jet back to base. Sweat dripped into her eyes as she pulled off the headset, bracing for indifference. Instead, the captain stood at the back of the room, arms crossed. "You trust your instincts," he said, his voice even. "That's good, but you fight the aircraft too much." She blinked, "Sir." He stepped closer, his gaze direct but not unkind. "Flying isn't about control. It's about trust. Trust the machine, trust yourself. The jet knows what it's built to do. Don't strangle it, guide it." The words settled into her like a seed planted deep. No instructor had ever framed it that way. To most, flying was about rigid procedures, checklists, absolutes. But the captain spoke of partnership, of flow. That night, she replayed his advice over and over, hearing his voice every time her hands touched the stick. It wasn't just his words, though. It was his presence. In the air, he was a calm center in chaos. Where other pilots barked orders, he spoke with clarity. Where others panicked at the first sign of trouble, he seemed almost unshakable. His calm was contagious, pulling the squadron into rhythm around him. She began to watch him with intent, not out of idolization but study. In the briefing room, she noted how he scanned maps, how he asked questions the others overlooked. On the runway, she observed his pre-flight checks, the way he ran his hand along the jet's frame as though acknowledging an old partner. In the sky, she tracked his formation, flying, smooth and precise, his movements never wasteful. Over time, he began to notice her in return, not with favoritism but with subtle guidance, a nod during drills, a pointed question in class, a correction delivered quietly rather than in front of the group. He never praised openly, but he gave her something better, his attention. One evening, after a training exercise that left half the squadron scrambling, he pulled her aside. "You see the field differently," he said simply. "Like you're already 3 moves ahead. That can save lives, but it can also get you killed if you forget the rest of the team isn't in your head. Don't just fly for yourself, fly for them." His words weighed heavy, but she carried them like treasure. And yet, no matter how much she learned from him, she still felt the line between them, between legend and rookie, between the one who led and the one who followed. He was the sun in the squadron's orbit, and she was a small, fast satellite circling in his light. She admired him, even relied on him in ways she didn't admit. To her, he was unshakable, the pillar that held the squadron together. But legends are human. What she didn't know, what none of them could have guessed, was that the day would come when that pillar cracked. The unshakable captain would falter, and in that moment the squadron would need someone else to bear the weight. Someone they had never expected. It began like any other morning on base, heat shimmering over the runway, jets lined in perfect rows, and the low buzz of preparation that never quite went silent. The squadron had finished breakfast and was halfway through a routine briefing when the call came in. A ripple passed through the room as the intercom crackled. Unidentified aircraft approaching U.S. airspace. No one groaned or muttered. This was no drill. The sudden change in atmosphere was immediate, electric. Chairs scraped against the floor as pilots rose, faces hardening into masks of focus. Her heart skipped a beat. She had trained for moments like this, but she had never flown into one. Most of the time, unidentified radar contacts turned out to be nothing more than civilian planes straying too close or foreign aircraft testing boundaries. Still, Any incursion was treated as serious. You scrambled, you investigated, you prepared for the worst. The captain took the lead as always. His voice was steady as he scanned the details projected on the briefing screen: speed, heading, altitude. Standard intercept, he said, his tone calm but clipped. Maintain formation. Eyes open, radios clear. She listened intently, nodding even though he wasn't looking at her. Minutes later, the tarmac thundered with life. Jets screamed as engines roared to full power. Dust and heat rolled across the runway as Raptors leapt into the sky one by one, silver streaks against the blue. She climbed into her own jet, the cockpit canopy sealing her inside a cocoon of instruments and adrenaline. Her gloves gripped the stick, her breathing steady but fast. The formation soared into open sky, the captain at the front like a spearhead. She trailed further back in the position assigned to newer pilots. Backup. Observe, don't interfere. Learn from the best by staying out of the way. Her radio buzzed with clipped exchanges. Altitudes were confirmed, positions tightened, fuel levels checked. The squadron cut through thin clouds, their wings slicing the sky with precision. She kept her eyes on her HUD, but her gaze flickered often to the captain's jet. His movements were smooth, his voice steady in her ear. Yet somewhere deep in her chest, unease stirred. She couldn't explain it. Something about the day felt off-kilter. Maybe it was the heat haze on the horizon, maybe the silence in the airwaves between standard check-ins, maybe the memory of his words echoing in her head. Trust the machine, trust yourself. Whatever it was, the feeling gnawed at her as they climbed higher. The unidentified contact grew closer, a blip on the radar slowly taking form. The captain's voice broke the silence. Squadron, maintain discipline. No one breaks formation. His tone was firm, measured, exactly as expected. Still, her grip tightened on the stick. The sun blazed against the canopy, painting the cockpit in harsh gold. Sweat trickled down her temple beneath the helmet, but she didn't notice. Every nerve in her body was tuned to the moment, every muscle tensed with anticipation. This was what she had trained for, the chance to face the unknown, to prove herself not just in simulation, but in reality. And yet, reality carried a weight no simulator could replicate. Every plane in formation carried a life. Every maneuver was irreversible. The stakes were not points on a scoreboard. They were the difference between safe return and disaster. Her mind flickered through the rules of engagement, through protocols drilled into her until they became instinct. Identify, monitor, report, only engage if ordered. She repeated them silently, like a mantra. The squadron held steady, streaking across the sky toward the horizon. The radar blip was now just minutes away. She checked her instruments again, scanning fuel, altitude, weapon systems, everything normal. Her jet hummed like a living thing beneath her hands. She stole one more glance at the captain's aircraft, its silhouette cutting sharp against the sun. She didn't know that in just moments, the unshakable man who had always been her compass would falter, that the steady voice she relied on would vanish, leaving silence in its place. For now, all she knew was that the mission had begun, and with it, the end of everything she thought she understood about who she was and what she was capable of. The sky at 30,000 feet was deceptively calm. From the cockpit, the world looked serene. Clouds stretched in cotton trails, the desert sprawled endlessly below, the sun bathing everything in blinding light. But inside the squadron's helmets, tension simmered like a live wire. The radar contact loomed closer. Every pilot's breathing was measured, every hand steady, every muscle tight. The captain's voice, steady as ever, cut through the static. Maintain formation. We close in, we identify, nothing more. It was the voice they all trusted, the voice that anchored the squadron. She breathed easier hearing it, her eyes flicking from her HUD to the captain's aircraft. He was right where he always was, at the front leading. And then, without warning, something broke. His next transmission wasn't crisp or calm. It came in ragged, distorted bursts. Squadron maintain, a sharp intake of breath. A cough, silence. Her heart lurched. Captain repeats, say again. No response. The captain's jet faltered, drifting just slightly off alignment, then more. The tight diamond of Raptors wavered, confusion rippling like a fracture through glass. Pilots muttered over the comms, some sharp, some panicked. What's happening? He's off course. Captain, respond. And still nothing. She felt her pulse hammering in her throat. Through the canopy, she could see his aircraft tilting, subtle at first, then more pronounced. The sleek machine that had always flown with perfect precision now wobbled like a ship tossed by unseen waves. He's out, someone muttered over the radio, disbelief in his voice. Out, the word hit like a missile. The squadron began to fray. One pilot surged closer without clearance, another pulled back in fear. Their formation stretched and broke, each jet reacting without coordination. At 30,000 feet, even small mistakes into disaster. Her mind screamed protocol, hold position, wait for orders, do not break formation, but her instincts screamed louder. She could hear her own breathing, fast and shallow inside the helmet. The captain, the man who had taught her trust, the one she had studied, followed, admired, was unconscious. His jet was sliding out of formation, endangering the entire squadron. If it continued, he could spiral beyond recovery. Worse, in their hesitation, the rest of the team might follow him into chaos. Her hands tightened on the controls. For the first time, she realized how utterly silent the comms had gone. No clear voice, no leader, just static and the sound of her own breath. The squadron was unraveling in midair, and no one knew what to do. This is it, she thought. This is the moment. She could stay where she was, clinging to the safety of protocol, waiting for someone else to step up. That was the path of invisibility, the path she had walked since arriving on base. Or she could trust what she had always known, that she was capable of more, that all the endless drills, the sleepless nights in the simulator, the captain's words about trust and instinct, had been preparing her for this very second. Her heart hammered, but her grip was steady. She flipped her comm to open channel, her voice breaking the silence like a blade. Falcon moving in, tighten formation, do not drift. Her call sign, Falcon, rang out across the squadron. Heads snapped to her, though she couldn't see their faces. She could feel their shock, their hesitation. But there was no time for doubt. The captain's jet was sliding faster, its nose dipping toward instability. She throttled forward, her Raptor screaming as it surged out of backup position. Alarms chirped in her ears, warning her about proximity as she closed the gap, but she tuned them out. All she focused on was the captain's plane, its silhouette shuddering against the bright sky. Her instincts kicked in. Years of training, thousands of practiced maneuvers, all of it rose to the surface. Every calculation felt instantaneous, every adjustment natural. She moved not as a trainee breaking protocol, but as a pilot assuming command. Behind her, she heard the squadron shuffle back into rhythm, uncertain but obeying. For the first time, her voice carried authority. Hold steady, follow my lead. And they did. For a breathless moment, she was no longer the rookie in the shadows. She was the center, the one they listened to, the one keeping them alive. The crisis was still unfolding, but the first step had been taken. She had claimed the sky, not in simulation, not in silence, but in reality, with every eye on her. The girl they had dismissed as the kid was gone. In her place, Falcon had risen. Falcon, you're up. The words ripped across the comms, not from the captain, but from one of the squadron pilots, his tone sharp with desperation. It wasn't an order, not officially. It was a plea, a recognition that in the silence left by the captain, someone had to rise, and somehow all eyes turned to her. Her call sign, spoken aloud like that, sent a current through her veins. Falcon, the name she had chosen at the academy, a name that until now had felt almost ironic. Falcons were hunters, apex predators of the sky. She had worn it like a dream, something to live up to. But now, with the squadron unraveling and the captain unconscious, it was no longer a dream. It was a demand. Her voice broke through the static, clear and, "Copy, I'm moving in. Everyone tighten spacing. Do not drift. Repeat, do not drift." There was hesitation in the airwaves, a pause where doubt threatened to choke them all. She could almost hear it in the silence, the question none of them dared speak. The rookie, now. She didn't wait for permission. Her engine screamed as she surged forward, slicing through the sky with practiced precision. The captain's jet wavered just ahead, its movements erratic but not yet lost. She angled in close, her Raptor responding like it had been waiting its whole life for this moment. Alarms chirped in her ears as proximity sensors warned her of collision risk. Her HUD flashed angry red, demanding she pull back. She ignored it. Instead, she spoke again, voice sharp as steel. "Left wing slide in. Right wing match altitude. Keep the diamond tight. If he drops, we drop with him." This time no one argued. The squadron moved, almost instinctively, snapping back into alignment. The formation, ragged moments before, began to reknit around her. She felt it, the shift. The air itself seemed to change, the static of panic replaced by the rhythm of order. She wasn't just filling a silence anymore, she was commanding it. Her jet slid up alongside the captain, wings almost brushing. She could see his helmet through the canopy, slumped forward, unmoving. A chill gripped her spine, but she couldn't dwell on it. Not yet. Her job wasn't to mourn or to freeze. Her job was to keep him alive, to keep them all alive. "Stabilizing him," she said into comms. "Everyone else eyes on me. If he goes, I take him in. You cover the field." Her words landed with finality. No hesitation, no doubt. She wasn't asking, she was declaring. And something remarkable happened. The squadron obeyed. Voices murmured confirmations. Wings adjusted. Jets slid into place with military precision. They weren't following the unconscious captain anymore. They were following Falcon. For her, it was like stepping into another skin, one she had been growing into for years without realizing. She wasn't the kid in the mess hall anymore, quiet and overlooked. She wasn't the rookie lingering at the edge of formation. She was the pilot who had seized the sky in its most dangerous moment, who had steadied hands when others froze. Every command she gave was answered. Every maneuver she executed was mirrored. Inside her chest, fear still pulsed like a drumbeat, but it no longer controlled her. It sharpened her, driving her to think faster, to act clearer. The captain's voice had always been the squadron's anchor, but now her call sign carried that weight. "Falcon adjusting speed." "Copy, Falcon." "Falcon, what's your heading?" "On you, Falcon." Each reply cemented it further. Her name was no longer a nickname. It was authority. Minutes stretched like hours as she guided the squadron, every breath measured, every maneuver precise. With each passing second, the captain's faltering jet held steady, shielded by the formation she had rebuilt. And though the crisis was far from over, one truth had already taken shape in the silence of the comms and the steadiness of the sky. Falcon wasn't just a call sign anymore. Falcon was a leader. The captain's jet shuddered again, tilting nose first in a slow, dangerous dip. Warning lights blared across her HUD, alarms screaming as her sensors tracked his descent. The air was unforgiving at this altitude. Just a few more seconds of instability, and he would tumble into a spin no pilot could recover from, conscious or not. Her jaw tightened. "Not on my watch." "Falcon, he's dropping," one of the squadron pilots shouted. "I see it," she snapped, already adjusting her throttle. Her Raptor roared as she surged closer, sliding into position just off the captain's wing. The sheer size of the moment hit her. This wasn't a simulation. This was real steel, real fire, real lives. And she was about to do something no one had ever trained her for. "Squadron, maintain formation," she ordered, voice clipped and steady. "Do not crowd, give me room." Her gloved hands danced over the controls, aligning her jet as close as she dared. The proximity alarms screamed louder, flashing crimson across her canopy. She ignored them. Inch by inch, she drew alongside the captain's drifting bird, wings trembling with the turbulence. Through the glass she could see him, helmet slumped, body motionless, hands limp on the stick. Her throat tightened, but her voice stayed hard. "I've got him." Every second was razor-thin. One wrong adjustment, and the two jets would collide in midair, a death sentence for both. But her instincts, honed over years of silent preparation, guided her. She matched speed, matched altitude, her jet holding him steady like an invisible hand. "Falcon, you can't hold him forever," another pilot said. "He's dead weight." "No," she said fiercely. "He's not while I'm here." She toggled her systems, syncing as best she could with his trajectory. It was like flying two planes at once, hers, responsive and sharp, his sluggish and unpredictable. The effort strained every muscle, sweat trickling down her back beneath the flight suit, but she held the line. Then the realization hit her: keeping him steady wasn't enough. They were still high, too high. If he blacked out completely, his jet would become a falling coffin. The only option was to guide him down, all the way to ground level. Her pulse thundered. Landing one Raptor was challenging. Landing two, one piloted by a ghost, was insanity. But insanity was better than watching him die. "Squadron," she said, forcing authority into her tone, "Falcon is taking him down. Stay tight on my wing. Cover us all the way in." There was a beat of silence then. "Copy, Falcon. On your lead. We've got you." The words hit her like fuel. They trusted her. They believed her. Now it was time to prove she deserved it. She banked gently, easing the captain's jet into a descent. The maneuver was painstaking. Her eyes flicked from her HUD to his plane, back and forth, calculating every fraction of movement. One slip, one gust of crosswind, and both aircraft could spiral out of control. The radio crackled with constant updates, altitude checks, airspeed confirmations, weather readings. Her squadron fed her everything she needed, but the burden of precision was hers alone. Every adjustment was life or death. Minutes bled into eternity. The desert floor crept closer, its rugged ridges coming into sharper focus. She clenched her jaw, guiding the pair of Raptors lower, the air thickening with resistance. At 5,000 feet, her arms ached from tension. At 2,000, her vision blurred from sweat. At 1,000, her throat was so dry she could barely swallow. But she didn't falter. "Falcon, you're steady," one of her wingmen said, awe-threading his voice. "You've got him." Her focus narrowed to a single point. The landing strip glowing ahead, a ribbon of safety in a vast desert of danger. "Gear down," she muttered, lowering her own landing system. The captain's jet followed only because she forced it into alignment, coaxing it like a broken bird refusing to crash. Her heart hammered as the runway rushed closer. This was it, the moment where all her control, all her defiance, all her courage would either triumph or shatter. "Come on," she whispered under her breath. "Fly with me, just a little longer." The ground screamed up to meet them. Two Raptors, one conscious, one not, falling together, guided by the hands of a pilot who had once been dismissed as a kid in the back row. "Falcon." The leader they hadn't expected, but the one they desperately needed. The runway loomed ahead, a strip of asphalt shimmering in the desert heat. Her hands were stone on the controls, every nerve in her body screaming as she fought to keep both Raptors steady. One was her own, alive and sharp beneath her command. The other was dead weight, the captain, sliding left, nose heavy, threatening at every heartbeat to tip into disaster. The comms were hushed now, a silence charged with collective breath. Every pilot in the squadron hovered close, their jets flanking her like guardians, but no one dared break her concentration. She was flying not just for herself, not just for the captain, but for all of them. If she failed, the wreckage wouldn't just be metal. It would be faith, shattered and unrecoverable. "Falcon," a voice whispered through the static, reverent and steady. "You've got this." She swallowed hard. Did she? Her body trembled with exhaustion, sweat soaking her flight suit, but her focus stayed razor-sharp. The captain's jet dipped again, and she corrected instantly, throttling up just enough to nudge it back on course. Inches separated steel from steel. The ground raced closer. At 200 feet, her breathing slowed. The panic in her chest melted into clarity. Every lesson, every drill, every word the captain had drilled into her head came alive. Trust your instincts. Trust the sky. Trust yourself. "Final approach," she said, her voice calm, almost detached. The wheels of her jet screamed as they hit the tarmac, sparks flashing beneath her. The captain's jet slammed down an instant later, harder than hers, skidding dangerously. For a heart-stopping moment, she thought he'd roll, the Raptor veering wildly across the strip. "Hold steady," she shouted, dragging her own jet alongside, edging her wing close, corralling him with her presence. It worked. The captain's aircraft groaned, tires squealing, but it straightened under her shepherding. Together, side by side, they thundered down the runway until the roaring engines eased into silence. And then stillness. She sat frozen, chest heaving as the reality sank in. They were down, both of them alive, against all odds. The comms exploded. Cheers, laughter, disbelief, voices tumbling over one another. Falcon brought him in. "Did you see that?" She held him all the way down. She pulled off her oxygen mask, gulping the thick desert air, her hands trembling now that it was over. Relief came in waves, crashing against the adrenaline that had carried her through. The canopy hissed open, desert heat rushing in. Ground crews swarmed both jets, medics sprinting toward the captain's Raptor. She climbed out, boots hitting the tarmac unsteady but proud, her helmet tucked under one arm. For the first time, she didn't feel like the kid in the shadows. She felt weightless. The squadron landed around her, engines howling before falling into silence. Pilots climbed down, one by one, all of them turning to her. No words were needed at first. The way they looked at her said everything: shock, awe, respect. Then one broke the silence. "Falcon." His voice carried across the tarmac like a salute. Another echoed it, "Falcon." And another. Soon the whole squadron was calling her by her call sign, not with casual familiarity but with reverence. Not as a label, but as a title she had earned in fire and sky. She met their eyes, one after another, and for the first time she didn't look away. The medics hauled the captain out, his helmet removed, oxygen mask strapped to his face. He was alive, barely conscious, groggy but breathing. Relief spread through her chest like sunlight. His eyes flicked toward her as they carried him past. "Falcon," he rasped, voice weak but certain. Her throat tightened. That single word meant more than any medal, more than any briefing, more than the roar of engines. It was acknowledgement, it was trust, it was everything. As the sun bled orange over the desert horizon, she stood among her squadron not as the overlooked rookie, not as the kid in the back row, but as the pilot who had risen when the sky demanded it. She was Falcon, and she had taken the sky as her own.